Hello and welcome to this week's video. Want to mix colours like a pro? Today I'm breaking down everything you need to know about colour mixing, from primary, secondary and tertiary colours to the secret tricks with hue, value and temperature. I'll show you how to control your warm and cool colours, how white and black affect your mixes, and even how to create perfect browns and greys using complementary colours. By the end of this video, you'll have the confidence to mix any colour you see and bring your paintings to life. Let's get started. Basic mixing. The colour wheel consists of the primary colours red, yellow and blue, the secondary colours green, orange and purple, the tertiary colours red, orange, yellow green, blue violet, red violet. The secondary colours are made by mixing two primaries together, so red plus yellow equals orange, yellow plus blue equals green, blue plus red equals purple. Tertiary colours are made by mixing a primary colour with a secondary colour next to it on the colour wheel. For example, red plus orange equals red-orange. Other things to consider. Every colour will also have a hue, value and temperature. In simple terms, hue, what colour is it? Value, how light or dark is it? Temperature, how warm or cool is it? Temperature. Every colour will have a temperature. The colour wheel is split into warm and cool colours. Red, orange, yellow, green, yellow are warm colours. Think of associations like sun, fire and heat. The cool colours are blue, blue purple and blue green. Think of associations like water, ice and shade. The transitionary colours are green and purple because these can be both warm and cool. But this is the really important bit. Everything is relative to what it's next to. Red is the warmest colour on the colour wheel. Blue is the coolest. As colours move away from red towards blue, they become cooler. This creates a hierarchy. So, for example, yellow is a warm colour, but it is not as warm as red. For a painting to be successful, it needs a balance of both warm and cool colours. White and black. Adding white, also known as a tint, to your colour will affect it in the following way. The value increases because the colour becomes lighter. The hue stays the same. It's still the same colour family. The temperature becomes cooler because white reduces intensity. Adding black, also known as shade, to your colour will affect it in the following way. The value decreases because the colour becomes darker. The hue stays the same. The temperature becomes cooler because black absorbs light. Neutrals. Mixing brown and greys, the power of opposite colours. Number 1, brown. Opposite colours or complementary colours sit opposite each other on the colour wheel. One is always warm and one is cool. For example, yellow would be warm, purple would be cool. When you mix opposite colours together, you will get a brown. Every complementary pairing will give you a different hue of brown. Let's take yellow and purple as our example. If I mix a purple and then mix that into my yellow, see how that gives me a brown. However, if I up the blue in my purple and make this cooler, look at what happens when I mix this with my yellow. It gives me a different brown, one that is cooler and bluer. If I add more yellow, it now pushes my brown more green. Now look at what happens when I add more red to my purple. It pushes this colour warmer. Therefore, I can control the temperature, hue and value of my brown according to how much yellow, blue or red I add to my mix. This is very important to understand. The colour hues in brown are very subtle, but you can find every colour hue in there. If I need to mix a brown, first identify what is the colour hue I see. In this brown, I am seeing an orange colour hue. I then look at my colour wheel to see where it falls. I think I am seeing a yellow-orange, so I know I need to mix a blue-violet into it to give me my brown. Bear in mind, yellow-orange is the predominant colour, so I will need more of this than the blue-purple. Always start off conservatively, adding a little of the cooler colour, seeing how this affects the colour hue and then adding to this. You'll waste less paint this way. This method works and will give you the right results every time, provided you can identify the correct colour hue in the brown to start with. If you are struggling, hold a grey card up to your subject matter and ask yourself, can I see red, yellow or blue? If you can see red, it can only be red, red orange or red purple. If you can see blue, it can only be blue, blue green or blue purple. If you can see yellow, it can only be yellow, yellow orange or yellow green. This will help you narrow down what you think you see, and then you can experiment with various colour opposites until you find the right brown. The more you practice, the easier it will get to identify which colour opposite pairing you need. Remember, white and black will affect the value, temperature and saturation of your brown. So if you are using these in your colour mixing, you may need to compensate in your mixing with your other colours. Grey. Grey behaves the same as brown. The colour hues are very subtle, but you can find every hue on the colour wheel in a grey. The best way to mix greys is by mixing your opposite colours together and then adding white. This will give you a grey that you can push both warm and cool if necessary. Let's take purple plus yellow plus white as our example. If I mix a purple and then mix that into my yellow and add white, see how that gives me a grey. Look at what happens if I add more blue to my purple and then add this to my yellow plus white. I get a cooler grey. Look at what happens when I add more yellow. My grey goes greener. If I add more red to my purple and then add my yellow and white, I have a grey that leans warmer. All I need to do then is identify what colour hue I think I see in my grey. If I am struggling, this time I will hold up a white card and ask myself, can I see yellow, red or blue? Once I have identified the hue I see, I then use the colour wheel to tell me which colour pairing I need to put it with. Is there anything else I need to bear in mind when I'm colour mixing? Yes. You need to know the temperature of the paint you are starting with. For example, you can purchase warm and cools of every colour. Cadmium red is a warm red. It sits here on the colour wheel. Alizarin crimson is a cooler red, but it is still warm. It sits here on the colour wheel, nearer to blue. If you are trying to mix a mid-brown that is warm or a warm grey, you would use your cadmium red. Also bear in mind every colour has a value. For example, my cadmium red will lighten darker mixes. So if I am mixing a dark warm brown, I may be better off choosing a different red like a transparent red oxide that is still warm but does not lighten my values. Mixing your own black. The benefits of mixing your own black is that you can take advantage of a warm and cool palette. There are many combinations you can use, such as ultramarine plus burnt umber, that gives you an orange-blue pairing, alizarin crimson plus viridian, which gives you a red-green pairing. I mix alizarin crimson plus transparent red oxide plus a very small amount of ultramarine deep for my warm mix, and then ultramarine deep plus a small amount of transparent yellow oxide for my cool mix. Mixed together, this gives me a black. Your palette. Every colour on your palette should be there for a reason. Things to consider when selecting colours are picking a warm and cool of every primary. Also bear in mind the value of the colours you select, the saturation and the opacity. Transparent colours behave very differently to opaque ones, and this will affect your mixing. If you would like to know more about understanding the colours on your palette, have a look at this video on my channel. And that's colour mixing in a nutshell. Remember, know your hues, balance warm and cool, control value and experiment with complementary colours. With these tips, you can mix any colour you need, all from your 3 primaries. Keep practicing, trust your eyes, and most importantly, have fun with your colours. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe and check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you'll find examples of my work and also details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching and see you for the next one.